morning, Pastor Mike.
Good devotion. Wow, we're already up to a good start.
I want to, this is absolutely amazing. I was reading, I've been reading Genesis, and I've been wondering, I was pondering this just last night or the night before.
There you go. Well, there you go. So I would say that you're in the right place at the right time. All right. As I said, whenever you see this top part here, resources compiled by myself, that simply means that I gathered the bulk of the information. This year, I tweaked probably 85% though, so I could probably safely just put my name on there, but that's okay. I'm not in vain, but not that vain.
Only 85%, right?
Right. Yeah, this one was a little easier to tweak. But and it may not take us that long, so it's a good thing we're running behind. No, I'm just kidding. All right. The morning. Let's talk about mornings. Some of us say that, well, I'm a morning person. And some of us say, I'm not a morning person. And what we're thinking of is our energy level, our alertness level, whether the fog, how long it takes the fog to lift. I'm not talking about, out at the airport, So we use that expression to describe our own, alertness, energy level, mindset, whether we had a good night's rest or we didn't have a good night's rest. So some of it isn't always the same, but generally, if you have a problem sleeping, you're not a good sleeper at night, then you're going to say, I'm not a morning person, right? Because every night I just don't get a good night's rest. Okay? If you get a pretty good night's rest, generally, there's always the one-offs, but if you get a good night's rest, usually, then in the morning you're feeling better, more rested, and you're saying, I'm a morning person, okay? So Sarah, what is it? Are you a morning person or not?
No.
No, okay. All right. So try.
That's great, but I'm not a morning person.
Try going to bed before 3 a.m. But anyway.
Yeah, give me that new phone, she said.
Yeah.
I used to say that if I wanted to watch the sunrise, I'd better stay up all night and watch it.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. If you could make it up all night. But you know what? There's a lot to be said about the mornings. And the Bible talks about the mornings. And we know that from creation, the Hebrew day began in the evening. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So I'll just diagram that. I think we've talked about this before. But the evening and the morning. Well, let's just start here. This is how we would look at it. Okay, so this is in our Western way of thinking. At the sunset, the sun's going down, say around 6 p.m. or so. It would be dark, right? It's dusk and it's starting to get dark, and then pretty soon it's 12 midnight. Okay. Apparently, Jeannie is still awake, okay? Waiting here. All right, 12 midnight, all right? Then it rolls around to 6 a.m., and then we have 12 noon, okay? So their day began in this section. The Hebrew day began with the evening, and then throughout the night while we're supposed to be sleeping, okay, it slips into the day, okay? And so the evening and the morning constituted a day, okay? And then in my research I ran across that the word echad for one, the first day, it's, what do they call that? They called that I forget the word they used. Something on the order of a singular compound. In other words, you take two components, two distinct parts, like the evening and the morning, and you squish them together, and you roll them into it becomes one. Okay? Does that sound familiar? Two become one. Okay? Andrew and Hannah, the Lord squished you together, right? And you become one flesh. Okay? So that's the kind of interesting way to describe that. So that's the two parts, the evening and the morning become the first day or the one day, okay? I just thought that was interesting. All right, so let's look at our notes today. So Linda, we'll let you start out. Give us the introduction, please.
Okay. In the book of Genesis, it is recorded that the evening and the morning were the first day in Genesis 1:5. In today's lesson, I would like for us to consider the morning portion of the day. It is true that we all start our day out the same no matter where we are. We all begin our day in what we call morning.
All right. Now that's common to all of us. All of us have a morning. Okay, when that morning for us begins, well, I guess we would all say that when the sun comes up, that portion of the daytime is our morning. Okay? So the Bible talks about some things that at least the Old Testament characters, how they considered the morning as for God and directed by God. Okay? God considers the morning part very important too. Okay? And why is that, Andrew? The title of the next section. Why is that?
Because we need to start our day off right.
That's exactly right. We need to start off on the right foot there, okay?
Want me to take
Oh,
that?
please, huh? Yeah, that was the segue.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Starting each day off on the right foot. The morning portion of the day was important to the faithful of the Old Testament. Note in the following passages that the morning portion of the day was a time for their earliest worship and bringing God front and center into their day.
All right, front and center. Now this is something that might not come easy, especially if you're not a morning person. But aside from not being a morning person, where that's not your most alert time, maybe as you slip into like late morning, noon, maybe that's when the fog starts to lift and you start to get more active, so that your energy level maybe starts to peak, around noon or so, and then your high energy is kind of in the evening. Okay, that's a lot of people. Okay, I suppose, right? But sometimes the morning is interfered with, not so much of the fog and the poor night's rest, but well, what did we have to do this morning, for instance?
Get ready, shovel.
Huh? I spent a half hour shoveling it, so there's things that are going to get in the way of our morning. Okay, so, but what he's talking about is, of course, for them it was daily, given their lifestyle and everything. But we're talking about a general mindset in the morning. In other words, we're talking about starting whenever our day begins. You sleep until 10 o'clock in the morning, then your morning begins at basically 10 o'clock. Okay, everyone else's morning is long gone, but yours starts at 10 o'clock.
I'm on
Okay,
my second meal at 10
your second meal. Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, now Hannah starts at 6 a.m. promptly. First kid wakes up, right? So anyway, it's what we do then in that earliest time. In other words, while I am awake, now I'm awake, now I begin my day, regardless of the time. It's how I start out my day. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Okay, and so for them it probably was morning, given their lifestyle, agriculture and things. They got up early and had to take care of the sheep and livestock and things like this. So Andrew's going to read some scriptures here that will give us a window in the Old Testament of their life and how they treated that morning time. Okay?
Then they rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their houses at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And the fire on the altar shall be kept burning on it, it shall not be put out. And the priest shall burn wood on it every morning, and lay the burnt offering in order on it. And he shall burn on it the fat of the peace offerings.
All right, let's just stop and talk about that for a moment. So if you were a priest, okay, and just quiz time, priest came from what tribe?
Okay.
Levites.
Levites.
Right, exactly, okay. True or false? Were all Levites priests? No. That wouldn't be a true or false, would it?
Just say all Levites
I just-
were priests. You say it like that.
Okay, I'm really good at giving quizzes. True or false? Were all the true or false? All the priests were Levites.
Yes.
False. They all were not Levites. Okay. True. No, forget true or
The
false.
priests were Levites, weren't they?
The priest had to be a Levite,
Okay.
but not all Levites were
Priests.
priests. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In order to be a priest, you had to be from what family line of the Levites? Aaron. Okay, so that line only. All right. Okay. So if you were a priest, you had duties every morning to perform. Now this is divinely assigned. Okay, so this is what God expected from his priesthood. Okay, to give the morning over to him, and as Andrew read, the fire on the altar had to be perpetual. So that that fire wouldn't keep itself going, would it? How many have fireplaces? And you light a fire first of winter, and then it just keeps. You don't have to add any more wood to it.
Boy, that'd be nice.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. No more chopping, cutting.
Cleaning out.
Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? So obviously, work had to be done all throughout the day, beginning in the morning, to keep this fire going. Okay, it's a very important fire for the Lord. So I had to keep it burning. Okay, you shall burn wood on it every morning, and lay the burnt offering in order on it every morning. So every morning was guaranteed then to start their day out worshiping the Lord. Okay? So that must have been important, because they didn't dream this. They didn't dream that up. This was told them. So if the priests were told to do this, it was by order, then it must be something pretty important to God for his people to start out the morning. Right? Okay? Now what does the New Testament church constitute? What are we in the eyes of God? Priests. Okay? So we fast forward from the Old Testament, this principle, and we look into the New Testament where we are a priesthood. Then if this principle was important for the priests in the Old Testament, then it should be us. Now maybe we're looking at the morning in a new light. No pun intended.
I was kind of waiting to say.
That was a good one though. That was a good pun. I should have claimed that one. But we look at the morning in a new light, okay? That morning belongs to not us, but the Lord. Okay? Oh, sure, the whole day does. But we're talking about the morning, okay? All right, so that's what they had to do 2 mornings out of the week.
No,
Oh, no! Did I read that wrong?
that's a good start, but no.
Yes, that's a good start, okay. So, what else do we learn from this? Every morning belongs to God. Wait a minute now. Every morning. How about holidays? You got holidays? Time off for good, Every morning belongs to God, okay? Now I want you to think about something. If it becomes cumbersome, tedious, ho-hum, mundane, can I use another word? To do that now, what are we going to do when we're in eternity?
We had to praise all day.
Yes. Okay. But what I'm saying is that if it's a chore now, what about when it's thrust upon us every day for all eternity? You see, so what we want to do is build a mindset toward this, that the day belongs to God, and the morning reflects our rising. Now our day begins. Okay, is it God's? Is it going to be God's or ours, Gene?
I want to ask, rather than it being thrust upon us, aren't we allowed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that
Yes.
going to be the joy of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's the mindset that will be there then. We're building that up now.
I think what you're saying is that the people who don't treat it like a burden aren't gonna think it's thrust upon them, you know?
Mhm.
They're gonna want to do it, cause they're doing it now,
Mhm.
and if they made on purpose God a part of their day, every day,
Mhm.
then they're gonna love
Yeah.
worshiping God and seeing Him every day, cause every day that's what we're praying for.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, specifically, we're praying in the mindset of God that
Mhm.
we see Him, that we're like Him, and so we're gonna love it.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I read somewhere where when the priest, the wave offering, okay, and he waved it across the field. It was, some of the Jewish rabbis believed that was a gesture, because all of the world belongs to God, okay? So, but he's given us a portion. And so some rabbis believe that the wave offering is a gesture to, okay, I'm going to release, because it's all consecrated to God. Okay, I'm going to deconsecrate this portion so that I can, in other words, deconsecrate, meaning God says, I'm going to give this back to you. Okay, but it's mine to start with. So we have to remove from my plate over to yours. Okay, so your gesture is, okay, Lord, please release this unto my use. Okay, and so the morning time, our prayers and our devotion, is like releasing the day to God. The day belongs to God. Okay, releasing it so that we can walk in that sphere unto the Lord. So we're not taking it from God. We're acknowledging that it is His. Okay, and asking permission then to walk about that day within our energies and our chores and our responsibilities, things of that nature. So there's just a lot packed into this whole idea there in Leviticus chapter 6 about the day belonging to God. Okay.
Well, Brother Mike, what you just illustrated is the way, which I totally agree with, of course, but it's also the way that I try to think about and handle the money that the Lord provides for me. I mean, I tie that first fruits like we're taught to do, but really all of it's His.
Yes.
And I pray constantly that I'm a good steward of that.
Yes.
And He allows me to buy things that I want,
Right.
and, those
Right.
kinds of things.
Right.
But I also know that when I've maybe bought something I shouldn't have, or sometimes even paid a bill too much or whatever, and not budgeted the way that I felt like He wanted me to. Because it's all His, not just a portion of it.
Yeah, it's all His, and how it's allocated, carved up, sliced up, is important how we look at it as well. Okay. Well, that's pretty good if you're paying more than what was required. That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
All right.
unless it, dips into your gas tank.
Well, that's
your
true. Yeah,
groceries.
yeah. Or Sarah's frosted flake supply.
She buys her own now.
She might do one, okay. Andrew, how about the next one?
Now it happened in the morning when the grain offering was offered, that suddenly water came by way of Edom, and the land was filled with water.
Okay, so what would be the point here? Just another indication of an offering was offered every morning, okay? In the morning, okay?
Then King Ahaz commanded Urijah the priest, saying, on the great new altar burn the morning burnt offering, that the evening grain offering, the king's burnt sacrifice and his grain offering, with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, their grain offering and their drink offering, and sprinkle it on the blood, and sprinkle on it all the blood of the burnt offering and all the blood of the sacrifice. And the bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by.
All right, so here again, a lot of work for these priests, okay? But it wasn't, and the law was burdensome. It was burdensome. It was burdensome to them. But it was on them to take this burden and enter into it with delight, okay, with a good positive attitude, okay? Because when you're done with these offerings today, guess what you get to do tomorrow, kids? The same thing, okay? And so when you're done on Tuesday with offering the offerings, what do you get to do on Wednesday? The same thing, okay? So the idea is, as we're discussing here, is to, if that's the case, and that's what God wants, then we need to begin to corral our, I guess our human nature to resist that, because the flesh lusts against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh. So by default, we're not going to like that. By default, that's not something we might do ordinarily. So we have to curb and control and contain the flesh and bend it to do that. That's not always easy, is it? What was the name of that book we just studied here a while back? Learning to Rule. It's not easy. It's not easy, okay? But if we want to rule, we have to learn to serve. Okay? Before king, you are a servant. Okay?
I find that if your heart's in the right place, like we try, we're not always successful, but if your heart's in the right place and you want to have that quiet time with God, that He'll provide it. Even if it's not first thing in the morning like it usually is or whatever,
right.
if somehow something wrecks that,
Yeah.
then you have God says, okay, I'll just give you another time, because
Yeah.
I can see your heart.
Yeah,
And I think that if we pray toward that end, that he'll definitely bless it.
yeah,
There's no doubt.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. The heart is the key, the heart is the key, okay? Absolutely the key. And what's supposed to be with these offerings as well, okay? All right, and that one last one there, enjoy.
And his sons would go and feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. So it was, when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Thus Job did regularly.
All right, so he was just mindful of, interceding for his family, and got up early and did that, okay? All right. So we see that the morning is, as demonstrated, is quite important to God and became important to God's people, as Andrew said, those of that mindset. Now we realize that as we look at Old Testament history, that eventually the flesh began to crowd out the desire to do this every morning. And it became a chore. Or no, I shouldn't say it became a chore. The chore, because it was a chore to start with, right? It's a chore. It's something that God commanded and demanded of them, okay? Imposed upon them. They wouldn't have done this on their own. So he says, this is what I want you to do every morning. Okay? So it's when their reluctance to do that began to grow, their desire to do that began to wane, that the idol worship came in. Because now if I turn from what's commanded and I begin to turn to an idol that I create, now I can dictate what worship I give that idol and when I so choose. Maybe not every day. Maybe every third Thursday, okay, when it's convenient. And so you can see where idol worship then, but I will say this, that they probably were, maybe in some cases, even more devoted to the idols than they were to God in terms of energy. And, well, you look at what happened on Mount Carmel. Did Elijah cut himself? Who was doing the cutting of themselves? And blood everywhere, and hooping and hollering and dancing around.
Baal prophets.
It was the Baal prophets. Okay? So if a third party was to stand back and look at the devotion level, okay, here's Elijah, praying to his God, and then observing these guys as he said, okay, you guys go first. Just watching them do all their hoopla. And then when it came his turn, and they're cutting themselves, and when it came his turn, he just prayed to God. And let the glory be to God. So energy level, the energy came down. Theirs was going up, but it didn't get very far. Okay? So that's what we're talking about, is just trying to keep up on this energy level, and as Andrew said, the heart's desire to stay with this, because this is what we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives on into eternity. Okay, to learn to love it for a new Christian, to get into that mindset for us older Christians to maintain it. One thing to start it, another thing to what? Keep it going. Okay, and the Bible has a lot to say about keeping it going. Okay, there's a lot more starters than there are finishers. Okay, the third section, then we'll give Sister Julie each morning.
Each morning a new day of remembrance and praises. The morning should be a very special time for God's covenant people, for it is then that we can acknowledge God's mercy in our lives and reflect upon His great faithfulness towards us. This I recall to my friend, therefore I have hope.
My mind.
Oh, sorry,
That's right.
repeat my man. This I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. Through the Lord's mercies we have not consumed, because His compassions fail not.
Yeah.
They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, saith my soul. Therefore I hope in Him. Lamentations 3:21 through 24.
Isn't that a beautiful verse? I mean, doesn't that just jump off the page? Through the Lord's mercies, we are not consumed. You know, Israel, And Lamentations is, written by Jeremiah. It's a very sad book. Have you read that one yet? Very sad book. But he finds room for hope and joy. In other words, even in a sad situation as Jeremiah found himself and people of God, he could still reach up for something and grab onto something, okay? And so I like this. I recall this to my mind, my memory. And therefore I have hope. And that's why we want to build a reserve. I like your phrase. I wrote that in my notebook. That when times get the roughest, we're gonna look around for a reserve to, as you said, dip into. And if we haven't been building that reserve to dip into, we've got nothing to dip into. It's like from scratch. You really want to start from scratch with faith and patience during the tribulation? Start from scratch? Are you kidding? That's not the time to start building a faith. That's the time to bring it forward, like you said, dip into what's already there. Okay? So I like this, to remember, and that builds hope. Memories of our encounters with God and His encounters with us, all throughout the day, builds His hope. And through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Every morning. Just like the sun comes up faithfully every morning. Right? As we saw in our Wednesday night study. He's faithful. Every morning that sun comes up. Okay? So he says, therefore, I hope in Him. So based on those facts, I hope in Him. I continue to hope in Him.
I look at it like, God's allowed us to even just wake up, and I have to ask myself the question, what am I so busy doing that I can't give back a portion to God?
Yeah.
I have to ask myself, well, what are you so, I know that the list gets long and I know that we have things to do, but I have to ask myself, I had this teacher in high school, he was probably 50, maybe 50, early 50s at the time, and he'd been in church, and saved, and probably since a little kid. But he said that he made a vow to himself one day. He says, I will spend at least 5 minutes reading the Bible every single day the rest of my life. And he said, with the exception of 2 days, and he remembers them very clearly, he kept that. And that's the thing, is you have to ask yourself, what are you so busy doing that you can't give 5 minutes to God? 10 minutes, whatever the thing is. The point is that what are we so busy doing that we can't do that? And so if the answer is nothing, well, we better do it, It reminds me of this thing that, this device that monitors you while you sleep. I'm not sure if I was mentioning that, but you sit it on your nightstand and it actually basically measures the motion of when you're tossing and turning, you're not getting a good night's sleep versus when you're just completely still, and then it records in the morning. But one of the things that it has built into it is the ability to write down a list. So probably from your phone, it probably remembers it. But what the goal is just before you go to bed, they want you to write down all the things that you have to do the next day so that they're not on your mind. And so you can actually say, okay, they've been documented, it's over there, I can just put them over there. Well, that to me is prayer in the morning. I don't even let myself think about what's going to go on that day until I've said, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do about these things? Because they're there. I know what I have to do, but I don't get worked up about it. I try not to. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but it's like trying to get worked up about those things and just say, all right, Lord, what do you have to say about this? I'm going to hand these things over to you. And your day, it's wonderful.
So your early prayer then is you're documenting the day's activities, laying them out before God as if you had written them down to release the anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah, instead of writing them down and just worrying about them, tomorrow or something, if that's even possible. What I'm saying is that prayer takes the place of writing those things down.
I see.
And taking them, instead of just leaving them on some tablet or some, phone or something, you give them to God and let Him deal with them.
Okay, sure. Yeah. And this is the kind of devotion we're talking about, and if that works for you in the morning, like I said, the heart must be there, then that's your time, that's your moment with God. All right. Well, there's a couple more scriptures, and then on the very back, that last section, Sarah, we'll give that to you in the conclusion.
Do you want me to read the one before? Or?
An early lesson on the back there, yeah, the whole back page.
An early lesson from God to his people. As the children of Israel departed from Egypt, God desired for them to begin to know him as their covenant God. There were many things to teach, many things they would need to know and to eventually come to depend on. One such lesson is seen in the sending of Maney, Exodus 16:1-36.
Now that will be your homework, to read this chapter, and meditate on that chapter, how that relates to our lesson. Okay, so what they were expected to do, and just everything wrapped in that chapter that's recorded in Exodus 16.
Conclusion. Beloved, every morning brings a new day and with it a renewed hope. A hope to draw even closer to the Lord. A hope to learn yet another valuable lesson from God. A hope that one day Jesus will return with his glorious kingdom and to spend eternity of mornings with him. Until such time, however, we may always remember that this life is to train us for the next. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Psalms 35.
Amen. I love that verse. I love that verse. It shows that it's not a permanent situation. The weeping is not permanent. It will be replaced with joy. And that's something. It's like negative, and then it's overcome by a positive. Okay.
My grandma always used to say, "This too shall pass."
This too shall pass. Yes. Yeah, Grandma is smart. All right, let's close in prayer. Father in heaven, we want to thank you again, Lord, for your grace, for this lesson, for those who participated, and all of us, Lord, who looked into the scriptures. We pray that they were a blessing to us. Continue to guide us each day, each morning. Be mindful that it belongs to you, as does the whole day.